Well, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And ladies and gentlemen, again, please make His Excellency feel welcome to the stage. Sir, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. So we're going to have a conversation over the next 15 to 20 minutes about the state of global energy, what's happening in the gas markets, and of course, what's happening in the politics as well. But Your Excellency, I thought we could begin our conversation by first starting here in Qatar. Tell me about the state of play today and the strategic objectives for Qatar Energy in 2025.
Sure. Thank you, Dan, and I'm very happy to be here in this prestigious forum. In Qatar, we have several areas we're working on in the energy sector. As you all know, we're the biggest LNG supplier, but I'll speak first about LNG. We are currently producing 77 million tons of LNG per annum. We already announced our plans to go to 142 million tons per annum. And if you look at internationally, we're adding an additional 16 to 18 million tons in Golden Pass LNG with our partner ExxonMobil in the US. So from 77, we'll be going to about 160 million tons per annum. So that's more than 100% increase in LNG. We're doing it in a very responsible way with the carbon capture, sequestration, using some solar, and all our LNG ships are going to be fueled by more than 125 ships that will be fueled by LNG, not heavy fuel oils, which also reduces emissions. So from a carbon footprint, it's probably the best LNG plan that you can have. The second area that we are focusing on here in Qatar is petrochemicals. We have increased our we have announced the increase of our petrochemical production by almost 130%. We're building the largest polyethylene plant in the MENA region here in Qatar, and we're building with our partner CP Chem, Chevron Phillips in the US, the largest petrochemical polyethylene plant in the world in Texas. So with these two, we increase our production by about 130% from where we stand today. The third element is fertilizer. We're today the second largest fertilizer producer in the world. We're going to increase that to double to 12 million, from 6 million tons to 12 million tons per annum. We will be the largest fertilizer producer in the world. And a lot of people don't know that 50% of all the food around the world is fortified, or it's enhanced by fertilizer that uses fossil fuel and mainly gas. So for us to reach 12 million tons, we'll be helping in feeding about 160 million people around the world, which is basically food security. The fourth element I would like to talk about is what we're doing on the environment. I think for us, we're a big believer in making sure that we have clean air and clean water and have the best environmental space, if you will, and air and water for our citizens living in Qatar and for everybody living in this country, and also for around the world. So we're helping everybody with the LNG, but in country we're doing a lot of work on renewables. So a few years ago we had zero renewables in Qatar. Today, 10% of the power that we are enjoying today comes from solar. Next year, it will go up with another two plants that we are going to inaugurate next year, one in Saad and one in Ras Laffan. Will go to about 15 to 16%. So we're doubling the capacity. And we've already announced that we're going to build a fourth plant, which is 2,000 megawatts. So we'll increase our solar capacity from today by 360% by 2030, making Qatar about 30% of our power will come from renewable energy. The last thing I would talk about is we have a lot of international presence in the upstream business that we're working on around the world to enhance our capability and our reserves from outside the country too. But inside the country, that's it.
So certainly a lot to talk about, and there's a lot happening within the space. Your Excellency, no one knows the LNG markets better than yourself. So from a demand perspective, what are you seeing next year, and what should we expect in terms of pricing as well?
I think demand is very strong for LNG. As you can see, the winter started quite cold in Europe, and already the storage is being pulled from. So we think for the long term, with the growth that you're expecting in some economies. I mean, a lot of economies have been slowing down for a while. Hopefully, they are going to be picking up. So with any growth, any economic growth, you see that gas is required. What has happened is a lot of countries have realized that a lot of the green ambitions of, I think I'm a very big supporter of using renewables, as I have mentioned, what we're doing in Qatar, using renewables to the most capacity that we can. But renewables, as all of you know, the sun does not shine all day, the wind does not blow all the time. So you need a sustainable energy source, and fossil fuel is the only way, and gas is the cleanest fossil fuel. If you couple it with carbon sequestration and other emissions reductions, I think it's the best solution that we have today. So you need to make sure that you have that in place. But a lot of people have miscalculated their requirement, and now a lot of countries are saying we need fossil fuel, we need more fossil fuel than they thought in their plans. So a lot of Asian countries that I have visited are changing their plans, and there is more requirement for gas. And there is a game changer in my view. I think there was some discussion, I didn't hear the whole discussion, some of it about AI, but as all of you know, AI is the new thing that everybody is talking about. AI needs a lot of power, and it needs it consistently. It's not night and day, it needs just power to be there as a base load. So and the growth rate in AI is said to be about 4 to 7% per year, depending on the country. But worldwide, it's about 4% that's expected. That was not there 3-4 years ago. So that's an additional demand that is coming in for gas, and I think putting pressure on gas. So I think the gas requirement is going to be large and required for a very, very long time.
Let's talk about the politics as well. So much of the conversation in the energy markets now is about the return of Donald Trump to the White House next year. What do you think this is going to mean for the Qatar-US partnership moving forward, and specifically in the energy space? What's the impact for you?
The Qatar-US relationship in the energy sector goes back around 90 years. And the oil and gas sector, when you plan something, it's a 30 to 50-year plan. It does not really look at just one administration or the other. And a big example of that is if you look at Golden Pass. We've been working on this for more than 10 years over several administrations. We should be exporting LNG in a year or two from now from Golden Pass LNG terminal. A case in point regarding President Trump, if you'd like, the largest petrochemical project in the polyethylene sphere in the world was actually signed, by me and by the CEO of Chevron Phillips at the time, in the presence of His Highness and President Trump in the White House. And we took the final investment decision in President Biden's time. And that was blessed by the administration at the time. We will start up in 2026, and hopefully we have the opening ceremony with His Highness and President Trump also being there. So these projects are multi-decade projects and survive governments. The most important thing is you have an excellent partnership between companies and between people, and that this is sustainable because it's a good business to business where there's mutual respect and a mutual gain on both sides. It's a win-win relationship, and if it's built on a win-win relationship and relationships, it should last any administration.
One thing that the president-elect has said that he is going to do is unleash American fossil fuels. He wants to drill, baby, drill. And part of that also means unleashing the cap on US LNG exports. What is that going to mean from a supply side perspective? And how do you ensure that this is collaboration, not competition, when it comes to supply?
Yeah, I think, you see, additional gas is going to be required, whether it's from the US or Qatar or other places. So additional LNG and additional competition is welcome. At the end, even if you open up LNG and say we're going to export another 300 million tons from the US or 500 million tons from the US, all these projects are driven by private enterprises that look at the commercial viability of projects. And there is going to be a limit whereby, at which, this will turn from something being viable to saying, no, there is a risk that is taken if we actually proceed with this. And it will all depend on supply, demand, and the long-term outlook for these companies. So I don't worry much about it. I worry about what we do, how competitive we are, to make sure our cost is at the bare minimum, where we can do, make projects run safely, reliably, and to the optimum cost possible, and let, really competition is good and healthy for the market, and we'll be able to cope with any competition. But at the end, it's private enterprises that have to look at economic viabilities. Government support and help, I think, legislatively open up, approvals and so on. But also keep in mind that if you take a decision to have an LNG facility or an export facility, and you decide to do it today, it takes you 6 to 10 years to actually have it up and running and operational. So it's not a switch on, switch off. It's really something tedious that has to be done by people that know the business.
But on balance, Trump, good for business, good for markets?
Yeah, I think Trump is good for business, and there is, we have dealt with, President Trump's administration in the past. We have dealt with President Biden's administration, and for us, it's a relationship between the U.S. and Qatar, and an excellent relationship regardless of the administration.
I also have to ask you about what's happening in Europe right now, because we have also learned that the EU is moving ahead with its Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive. This is also called CS3D. I know it's something that you've been looking at very closely. What's your take on this, and do you think it ultimately presents maybe more challenges than opportunities for Qatar and Qatar Energy?
The CSDDD, the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive is a very interesting directive. I think before I actually answer the question, if I can describe to the audience and to the listeners what it exactly is, because not many people know it. I think, this is a directive that really deals with environment and labor rights and human rights with labor. That's predominantly what it does. And both of these we completely support. We absolutely have all the respect for the labor, and make sure their labor rights are preserved. And the environment is very important for us. So the concept of what we're talking about is something agreeable to everybody in the room and everybody around the world. The issue is how you go about it. And what they have done is they've said that any company that deals in Europe that makes more than 450 million euros generated in Europe as based in Europe, or sells to Europe for a value of more than 450 million euros. So that's Qatar Energy, that's Exxon, that's Shell, that's Toyota, that's GM. It's not oil and gas, it's just any corporate. So that's the first, for you to be more than 1,000 employees and 450 million euros. So what you have to do is, one, you have to say that I will abide by Paris Accord. So I have to be, as a company, net zero, which for us as Qatar Energy, with all the expansions I talked about, I can assure you I cannot meet net zero as a company. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I need to make sure, with putting a team of probably 1,000 for Qatar Energy, 1,000 people, their dedicated job is to go and look at all my subsidiaries and suppliers around the world, even if there is a nail or a screw that we buy in one of the contracts that I have that has a subcontractor and a subcontractor. I'm responsible for all of them, to go and look at their labor rights, and if they're behaving or not, and if they are not, I'm penalized. Okay. And the third thing is, I am responsible for tier 3 emissions. Sorry to insult your intelligence, for those of you that are familiar with what I'm talking about, but tier 3 emissions is, tier 1 is when I'm an oil and gas producer. So what I emit is tier 1 as CO2 that I emit. If I buy electricity from an electricity producer and they emit CO2, so the electricity I use, that's tier 2 emissions. Tier 3 is when I sell Qatar Airways jet fuel and they burn it flying to London, then I'm penalized as Qatar Energy for that emission. So that's so I'm responsible as a corporate for all tiers up to tier 3. And the best thing about the whole thing, or the most interesting thing, so now I think I've given you some education about CSDDD. So what will make you, I think, be shocked is the penalty can be up to 5% of your total generated revenue worldwide. So the EU can penalize Qatar Energy for not being compliant with one of these things with my worldwide sales revenue to the world. So it makes absolutely no sense. So to me, my message to Europe and to the EU Commission is that, are you telling us, I don't want your LNG into the EU? Because I'm not going to supply EU with LNG to support their requirements for energy and then be penalized with my total revenue worldwide going to EU. So there's something wrong there. And I would like to take it one step further. QIA, Qatar Investment Authority, any sovereign fund, any fund manager around the world would be looking at companies that they currently own. This will be put in place in 27, by the way. So companies that we own, as QIA owns some companies, or a company that we're looking to buy, and say, will they be penalized by 5% at some point? And in that case, should I pull my investment out of EU, or should I actually not invest and look at another company that is in another country and invest there? So I think what the EU is doing is really something surprising. I think it will harm them. And for companies that will have to comply, will need to put basically an army of people to do all these due diligence. And guess what? If there is more cost on me to do this due diligence, who pays for it? The customer. Because it increases my cost. So I think it's completely ridiculous to have such a legislation in place, and I think the EU needs to review it thoroughly, because I think it has far-reaching implication that harms their own companies first, and all the companies that deal with the EU.
Of course, the Europeans have also just come through an energy crisis. They continue to have war on their doorstep, and they need all the energy that they can get. So are they living in reality here?
No, and their economies are not doing great. So they need foreign direct investments, and they need support. And how do you fuel growth? You fuel growth with energy. You need energy to grow. You need more industrialization. They have plans to do much more. And I think this needs to be reviewed. And I have talked to several leaders of energy and different areas and legislators in Europe and different countries, and they're all I think looking at this hard. But I think it's very serious for them if they do not look at it, because it will have far-reaching implications that will harm Europe.
One more question just on the COP29 agreement that we've just seen. Omitting a transition away from fossil fuels, I'm wondering what your thinking is on that and where we stand in the energy transition today and the role that gas will ultimately play in that.
You see, gas is going to play a very big role because, as I said, the sun does not shine all the time, the wind does not blow all the time, and also you have droughts in a lot of places. I mean, you've seen in South America, Brazil and other countries where they're depending on hydro also had to go to other sources because there wasn't enough rain to fuel the hydro power. So I think we need to have a sensible approach. We have 1 billion people today, as we speak, that do not have the basic electricity that we enjoy, and we should make sure that everybody has ample supplies of energy for their growth and for them to live a good life. And let's not, I think, take the approach that I am rich, I can do whatever I want, I don't care about others. That's the approach that's been taken by most. And that's very unfortunate. We need energy, we need to do it in a clean way, we need to couple it with sequestration, we need to do it in a very responsible manner, and we need to have clean air and clean water for people. But we should not exaggerate and do something that impedes our progress.
Your Excellency, I've always enjoyed speaking with you. I always learn something when I
Thank
speak
you.
with you. So thank you so much for your time
Thank
today.
you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for watching in the session.